Scorpio, welcome to my channel. It is a delight to be here with you today. So thank you so very much for joining me. Please do trust that whenever you have found yourself here, there are likely to be messages within the contents of this video for you. I would strongly encourage you to use your discernment. Take only what resonates with you and leave the rest for someone else. Let's dive right in, Scorpio. We've got a lot to talk about. Actually, as I was preparing to share these messages with you, I had tons coming in. So let's get to it. While shuffling, I split the astro alignment deck, and on the left was the Scorpio card, on the right was the fire card. Okay, obviously it goes without saying that Scorpio is you. And then the fire card, of course, is this radiant, enthusiastic, dynamic energy. The thing that I found really interesting about these two cards showing up is your card showing up in your reading is essentially you showing up for you, or this is, you know, maybe your higher self, your angels that are like, hey, this is about you, right? And I think we've had this conversation before with regard to showing up for yourself and, you know, making decisions based upon what it is you want out of life and what your calling is, what your purpose is, what that feels like for you. But anyways, I digress. You know, Scorpio energy is this deep, intense, transformative energy. And the thing I found really interesting about these two cards showing up is that they're very similar in their meanings, right? Scorpio being co-ruled by Mars and Pluto, you know, Mars being this fiery, passionate energy, and of course fire being fire, you know, being radiant and enthusiastic, and, you know, again, it's this very passionate kind of energy, both of those showing up, and also both holding these meanings of transformation. You know, again, transformative energy with Scorpio, and then this dynamic energy with fire, which is always changing. So I thought that was really interesting because I feel like because you're a fixed sign, there's this real aversion to change at times, right? I feel like you would rather things just stay the same because you know how to navigate that. It feels comfortable. It feels safe. It feels, I am actually getting the word cozy. I don't know if that's a word you would use, but but there is this, you know, feeling of, I would actually just rather that things just stay the way that I've grown accustomed to. It's not even necessarily that you like the way things are, if that makes sense, but just that it's comfortable. You know how to navigate it. And so there's the feeling of, I'd rather it just stay that way. And this is something that is seen commonly, right? Where even if we know something's bad for us, we'll remain in that situation, or we will continue to engage in certain behaviors or habits or whatever it is, mindsets, simply because it feels more comfortable than changing. But both of these cards come through speaking about change, speaking about transformation, speaking about things not staying the same. And I feel like, again, there's this discomfort in that, even if you know that whatever it is that maybe needs to change isn't good for you, or is no longer serving you. Something else that was interesting that I picked up on while just kind of sitting with these cards a little bit is the question, or rather, is actually a lot of different questions that started coming to the forefront. For example, is there a fear of intensity? Because both of these cards are intense energies. Of course, Scorpio being an intense energy and fire being intense. Is there a fear of intensity? Is there a fear of your deepest passions or desires, what lights you up? And is there a fear of what makes you unique? Is there a fear of being different, of standing apart from? Because there is something here about wanting to fit in some kind of way. I'm not saying that you want to necessarily, be trendy or whatever it is. I'm not saying you even want to be popular. But there is a feeling of wanting to fit in. Maybe that's with culture, maybe that's with, family, maybe that's with a friend group or some kind of group you're a part of. But there's a feeling of wanting to not be cast out. There's something about, wanting to be like a part of the tribe, let's say, whatever that looks like for you. With that in mind, is there a fear or a resistance to the potential changes that might unfold if you were to be truly seen for your depth, your intensity, your passions? What would happen if you were to just fully embrace everything that you are, your passions, your fire, all of it? Is there a fear of the changes that might take place if you were to do that? And I'm getting this very interesting feeling, which is that you might actually have people around you who might not handle it so well if you were to outshine them. Like they might not be okay with that. Like it really might be damaging to their ego and their pride. The interesting thing about it is it may not even necessarily be that you would be, let's say, more successful than them or even more liked than them. What I mean by outshining them is being able to fully accept yourself and embody who you truly are, to be fully authentic, to be truthful. And the reality is that when someone is inauthentic, and they come into the same vicinity as someone who is, the authentic person's truth, their light, it kind of exposes the inauthenticity of the other person. Does that make sense? So when one person starts to be authentic and truthful and they embody that and they're not afraid of it and they just, do what they feel is best for them, and, they're not hurting anybody else, they're not trying to step over anybody else, they're just living their life. Sometimes that can create rifts in certain relationships and certain like familial dynamics and group dynamics and things like that. And so there comes this question of, is there a fear of that? Could that be something that is hindering or holding back who you truly are, or preventing you from accepting or embodying your depth, your intensity, your passion? There's this image that I keep seeing, which is, essentially like someone trying to make themselves as small as they can in like the corner of a dark room, right? There's something about being made to feel uncomfortable or unsafe in self, right? It's giving me these heavy kind of root chakra vibes. And you may be, or maybe have been, trying to establish your own roots, like trying to figure out what's true for you, what feels right for you, what aligns with who you are, your morals, your values, your principles, these sorts of things, right? Trying to kind of navigate your way through what's true. And that's interesting because I feel like there's some part of you, this is something that I'm just getting now, I feel like there's some part of you that maybe has been working on your own healing, trying to kind of alchemize some of the traumas, programming, things like this. I feel like there's some aspect of you that's been exploring these things, or maybe you've been doing this for some time, but it does feel like you're trying to kind of go your own way type of thing, right? Like I'm trying to establish my own truth, my own path. But I don't know, it's so strange because there's something here that is like coming up against that, right? Something that again is trying to like make you feel wrong or unsafe in yourself or in your sense of self, or what maybe your morals and values and principles, maybe the things that, you know, don't align with whatever it is you were taught or whatever your culture or society or whatever it is says, right? I also got the number 444, which again is just really interesting how all of this ties together. I feel like that meme, and I'm sorry, forgive me, I don't know what show it's from, but it's got the guy on it with like all the red strings on the on the cork board, like connecting all the dots. That's kind of what this feels like coming through, because I feel like it all kind of ties together. But I got the number 444, and initially what came through strongly with that number is foundation. It's like what seems to be really needed here is this support and foundation. So how do I say this? It's like support for building the foundation. It's like, I think a good word to use for you, Scorpio, it's like this intense focus on foundation and strengthening that foundation through support. And this doesn't necessarily have to be external support, by the way. I feel like this actually is more likely support coming from within self. Because if we're relying on external support, I mean, the truth is that support can leave at any given point in time, right? God giveth, God taketh away. So like you could have it one day and not the next. And I'm not saying that to like freak you out or make you paranoid or anxious or, you know, to trigger you or anything like that. I'm just being real here. So there's this focus on creating that support from within, creating that foundation and strengthening that foundation from within self. It feels like, you know, to truly create something lasting, it has to start from within. It has to. I feel like this is a really interesting time for you, Scorpio, because it feels like you may want to like go and move and make things happen, but it feels more like maybe what you're being asked to do is to actually give yourself time to reflect, take time to reflect, take time to heal. Well, that's not to say that maybe, you know, things aren't moving in some ways or what have you, but it's not about forcing. It feels like the more time that is allowed for reflection, for unpacking, for healing, the more things are just going to naturally unfold. Does that make sense? It's like, I feel like an example of this is, you know, if you cling too tightly to something, it can't be allowed to flourish, right? It can't be allowed to grow. Another interesting point about the number 444 coming through, the number 4 in the tarot is the Emperor, which of course corresponds with Mars and Aries, which brings forward this energy of authority and power, definitive boundaries, protection, like leading your own evolution, exercising sovereignty over your own reality. The warning there is like, let's not become a tyrant, but rather to find balance. It really doesn't feel like it's going to be a problem. Like, I kind of feel like I have to say it as a disclaimer. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, don't become a tyrant in this process, because you know, the person who thinks that they have all the wisdom is the most foolish of all, right? So it's kind of like one of those one of those disclaimer type of things. But I feel like, you know, the key here is to find balance and embrace change and prepare for transformation, because I feel like it might be coming. I feel like change may be coming, right? I feel like, and the crazy part about it is I don't feel that it's necessarily self-initiated. That's not to say that it can't be, of course, because, you know, maybe you're a little bit more enthusiastic than others. But I don't know, there's something here that says maybe things just shift and you have to pivot. Maybe you just get tired of your own nonsense. Maybe you just get tired of experiencing, you know, similar situations and circumstances. Maybe you just are over it. But it doesn't, I don't know, there's not a whole lot of like, yes, let's do this. It could be that the shift, the change is pivoting from being someone who's been quite uncomfortable with change and transformation to someone who maybe isn't so fearful of it. You know, maybe that's a big part of, you know, this incoming transformation or shift that could take place. But what's interesting about this, right, is this kind of as within, so without vibe, which is to say, if things feel very, you know, claustrophobic externally, if things feel very uncomfortable externally, you know, it's likely that the same is true internally, which leads me to everything that was coming through for you initially. So the initial message that I got came through a song called Lean on Me by Bill Withers. I'm sure you've probably heard the song. So there were two parts of the song that stood out to me. One is very well known. You may have heard this before, right? The chorus, lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. And then the part that says, we all need somebody to lean on. And so the reason why I feel like this song has come through for you is there's something here, okay, about a lack of emotional reciprocity. Now, interestingly, I'm getting something fresh coming in right now, which is you may feel that there's a lack of emotional reciprocity between yourself and others, meaning maybe you try to open up to people and it's not reciprocated, okay? But what I had coming through initially is this fear of vulnerability. And I feel like a lot of this stems from this message that I had coming in, and I had to write it down verbatim, which is you don't have to carry it all on your own all the time. Okay, I'm going to say that again. You don't have to carry it all on your own all the time. And it feels like this is where, okay, yes, thank you, Lord. I feel like that feeling I was picking up on, okay, of maybe you trying to connect deeply to other people or to, you know, be more intimate with other people and not feeling like it's reciprocated could be coming from some childhood trauma, pain or wounding, okay? Because I did get this message of you may be asked to address childhood trauma, pain, and wounding around asking for help or having your feelings and experiences validated. Okay, so it's interesting. Like there's a feeling of perhaps you could be someone who experienced, you know, this trauma, pain, wounding around trying to connect deeply with others and be intimate with others and to share your truth with others and feeling like it's rejected. I don't know why I get this feeling of like, I get this feeling of it feeling a lot like, nah, I'm good. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like reaching out and someone essentially saying, nah, I don't want to, nah, I'm good. Like, I'd rather not. And I feel like I need to say, like, that reflects on them, not you, okay? And I'm not saying that, you know, you are like completely oblivious to this. I feel like there may be some part of you that knows that it has nothing to do with you, but I just feel like I need to say it out loud. Like, someone else rejecting your depth, your intensity, has nothing to do with you. It actually is a reflection of their own inability to be deep or to allow themselves to experience their own intensity. You maybe also could be someone who has a fear of being seen as weak, or a fear of having weaknesses that can be used against you, which could be a pain point for you as well. Okay, so a lot of what's coming up here does seem to perhaps have some threads or some ties into some kind of pain or trauma or wounding from your past. Okay, maybe this goes back to childhood, maybe not. It doesn't matter either way, you know, apart from the fact that if it's something that, you know, you've experienced since childhood, then this way of being may be a little bit more ingrained, you know. But there's so much going on here. Scorpio, there's so much going on here, and I feel like I don't need to say that to you. I feel like it's just validation for you, because it's like there's so many things that are moving beneath the surface that don't really have anywhere to go. Which brings me to my next point, which is, you know, maybe there's the fear of loosening the lid, which I'm getting could be, you know, loosening the lid on everything that you've just been holding on to, everything that's just, like I said, been swimming beneath the surface with nowhere to go. But on top of that, it feels like, or maybe it's like a and or type of thing. Maybe you are aware of, you know, some of the darkness that you have worked very hard to contain, right? Like maybe you're aware of some of the darknesses that you hold within, and you've been trying to keep it all on lock. Because I don't know, there's something here, Scorpio. There's something here that says, I've been with myself enough to know, to some degree, how dark things can go. And it's like, if I let this start coming out, God only knows what's going to happen. So that could be a very real fear for you as well. And as these messages were coming in, and I'm, you know, noting them, it gave me heavy connections or parallels to the song Mansion by NF, like vibes. If you've never heard that song, as with the other song, it will be linked in the notes below. Please give it a listen, because I feel like the vibes are there. Okay, the verse that came through to mention to you, Scorpio, is the third verse, which says, you might get other doors to open up, but this door's not. Okay, so there's a feeling of perhaps you being someone who compartmentalizes often, not only with other people, but with yourself. Like, I wholeheartedly feel, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, by the way, okay? Compartmentalizing things is not inherently unhealthy, but it can be if it leads to chronic reliance, if it leads to suppressed emotions, emotional detachment, emotional dishonesty, if it leads to difficulty forming intimacy, if it leads to this inability to process emotions, or if it leads to a fragmented sense of self, things like this, right? Then that's where it becomes unhealthy. But I feel like you are someone who, like I said, this is not inherently unhealthy. Most of us do this to some degree, okay? Dare I say everyone does this to some degree. You know, person A gets one version of you, right? Person B gets another version of you. And maybe you have someone who you feel incredibly connected and close to, and maybe they get the whole kit and caboodle. But even that's not the whole kit and caboodle, right? Which, you know, I mean, realistically speaking, I don't believe that anyone outside of yourself can truly ever know you fully, because they aren't you. But there may be someone in your life who gets to see more than anyone else. And I feel like that probably terrifies you, honestly. I feel like it's like, how do I say this? I don't even know if the other person, you know, your person you feel the most safe with, the most comfortable with, the most authentic with, I don't even know if they know how much it terrifies you, like how much it takes for you to be that transparent with them, for you to allow them into your world to that degree. Like, I just feel like they just don't know what that takes for you, like what that asks of you and how terrifying it actually is. And that's not to say that other people, you know, aren't terrified of other people knowing them or don't have their own fears or what have you. I mean, I would feel pretty safe saying that a vast majority of the population has some kind of fear around abandonment or rejection. Okay, so you're probably not alone in that, but I do feel like the intensity of it all for you is maybe, you know, a little bit next level, right? I feel like that's why you're so selective about what you share with whom. Again, not necessarily a bad thing, because I don't feel like you should be running out here, you know, throwing every bit of who you are out here on the front page of the New York Times for everyone to read. Like, I just don't feel like that's wise. Okay, so I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but where maybe that can become a little bit of a struggle is if, you know, you're someone who's very selective and, like, you know, more inward, or more, let's say, withholding, but you want others to be very forthcoming, right? That can certainly create some friction. So I feel like these dynamics may be things that you are working through, or to examine more deeply, to take inward and to really explore and to maybe come to understand on a new level. But again, you know, with all of this coming forward, I feel like it is asking you primarily to address some of the trauma, wounding, and programming that may be coming up around everything we've been talking about, and to, you know, maybe meditate on the questions that I was asking earlier. Because I feel like moving forward, you have to be more authentically aligned. You know, it feels like we're kind of all in the, how do I say this? If you've ever heard the phrase like, it'll all come out in the wash. Okay, I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but like, I feel like we're all in the wash, right? Or maybe a better way to put that is like, using a more like biblical reference, maybe you've heard this, is separating like the wheat from the chaff. Moving forward, we are all being asked to be more authentically us, to be more true to who we are. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's better to just rip the Band-Aid off than to, wait and for someone else to rip it off for you. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So, true to your nature, Scorpio, I feel like, this may be a pretty intense transformative period for you. I feel like, should you choose to kind of embrace what's going on, to allow transformation to unfold, I feel like it's going to be a much smoother ride. That's not to say that it's going to be easy, because I don't think it will be. I'm just going to be honest with you. But I do feel like it's going to be a lot easier to let things unfold and to roll with things as they come, versus kind of white knuckling the way things have been and trying to cling to that when the river is raging against you. Okay, so I'm very curious to see what's going to come through the cards for you. Let's get into it and see what they have to say. Father, Mother, Life, Christ, Universe, Spirits, Guides, Angels, Ancestors, our higher selves, tell us please, what messages would be most helpful for Scorpio at this time? Thank you. Oh, okay. Interesting that your cards... okay. We'll put these two together. Interesting that your cards all came out face up. Because again, I feel like it's reiterating the whole thing I was just talking about, which is no more hiding, right? It speaks to things being out in the open for everyone to see, right? Just very interesting. You have here first Lilith, power, activism, vengeance. If you have Libra placements, you may want to check out that video as well, because I think this card came out first for Libras as well. But for you, Scorpio, I feel like it's coming out actually in a similar kind of way to Libra. But it does feel like it's coming out asking for you to kind of stand up for yourself, to take back your power, right? And the crazy thing about this, and what I'm picking up on, because here's the thing, your intensity, Scorpio, is like you've got both sides of the pendulum. Okay, so what happens when we suppress ourselves? What happens when we're dishonest with ourselves and we betray ourselves again and again and again, right? Eventually, it comes out. Eventually, it rises to the surface, and eventually we have to face that. But the thing of it is, does it come out because you've focused your attention on it and you're kind of, doing a little bit of like spiritual surgery, or does it blow up in your face and everyone else is around you? Because that's, I don't know how to say it, but it's kind of like it's kind of coming through that way. Like Lilith is like walking this fine line, right? And it's like asking for you to like reclaim that power yourself. I'm actually seeing this image of like a thumb, you know, it's like living under someone's thumb. And, you know, insert whatever it may be for you in the place of, you know, that thumb. But oh, I don't know. Now I'm kind of seeing it another way too. I'm seeing it like a foot on your neck type of deal. Okay, I don't know how that may be showing up in your life, like what that might actually look like, but it feels like living under somebody's boot, living under somebody's thumb. And maybe, you know, somebody, maybe that's societal rules, maybe that's cultural, maybe it's familial, maybe it's, you know, a relationship, or I don't know, whatever it is. Maybe it's something, you know, that you've placed upon yourself, whatever that might be. But it feels like it doesn't allow you to grow. It doesn't allow you to flourish. It doesn't allow you to have power or autonomy over your own being, right? It doesn't feel sovereign. It feels like living, moving, acting for someone else or for something else that maybe isn't necessarily in alignment or agreement with your truth. So I do feel like this is coming up to say it's time to take your power back. Here's the interesting thing about this, okay, is like what these cards feel like as they've come out is like a step-by-step process. Okay, so I'm seeing this kind of as like almost like an instruction manual. Do what feels best for you. You don't have to do any of these things. It's your life. Live it how you see fit. But you have here third quarter moon, breakdown, readjustment, forgiveness. And I feel like part of, you know, taking back your power is this breakdown of whatever structures you've been living by up to this point that aren't yours or aren't in alignment with your truth, with who you are. And understanding that process, you know, the breakdown of what isn't working, it's going to take some readjustment. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And it is going to ask you to have forgiveness for yourself, especially. Because I mean, this is something that I feel like is experienced by a lot of people, right? As you start to kind of see the rules you've been living by that are not in alignment with who you are, there can come this anger, this frustration with yourself. Like, why did I let myself do that? Right? And look at how long I've done that. I mean, some people spend a majority of their life living this way. Right? And when you start to see, there can be this part of you, and of course it's, you know, a lot of times the traumatized part of you, your trauma brain starts to like attack you, right? So this is going to ask you to forgive yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. I feel like it's also going to ask you to have a lot of patience and forgiveness for others. Now, forgiveness doesn't mean acceptance. It doesn't mean I'm just going to allow this to keep happening. But there, you know, as you go through these different stages of uncovering the truth of yourself and becoming more conscious, there comes a point where you come to this understanding that, okay, I didn't know these things until I did, and these individuals in my life aren't going to know these things until they do. And the thing about it is you can't make anyone know them. You can't force anyone to accept them, right? It just is what it is. Like, they have to be ready. Their consciousness has to evolve enough to be able to receive that. So again, it's, you know, forgiving yourself for not knowing what you didn't know. And I think, you know, stage 2, if you will, of this process, I think is going to ask you to allow that to unfold, right? So it's like, okay, there's this acknowledgement that in order for me to take my power back, okay, and I'm putting myself, like, if I were you, in order for me to take my power back, there's going to have to be this breakdown of the structures and systems that I've been adhering to, that I've been living by, which is going to ask me to make some adjustments. And that's probably going to be uncomfortable. And the more honest I am with myself about what needs to break down and the adjustments that need to be made, the more likely it is that I'm going to have to extend forgiveness to myself and give myself some grace so that I can truly create change, right? You have Cancer, nurturing, sensitive, caring, right? So I feel like I've probably just spent a good several minutes kind of diving into this energy already. But it goes without saying, right? Like, in order for you to grow, you have to be nurtured. Okay, so trying to take back your power and to allow some things to break down and to make some adjustments isn't going to allow you to grow if you're just beating yourself down about it, right? If you're not having patience with yourself, if you're not giving yourself grace, if you're not forgiving yourself, if you're not giving yourself time, right? If you're not being sensitive to yourself, if you're not being caring towards yourself, what you're trying to grow, the changes you're trying to make, are not going to be nurtured, right? You're just you're just creating a whole new cycle of trauma. So it's like step 3, okay, is to be sensitive to what it is you're going through and to kind of mother yourself, right? Be caring to what it is that you are doing. Nurture what it is that you're trying to grow. You know, if a friend is going through some things, or a family member or someone you love is going through things, you know, you're not gonna holler and scream at them and belittle them and demean them and, you know, just be cruel to them because they're trying to figure it out, because they're struggling, right? No, you're going to be there for them. You're going to support them. And so it's asking you to, like I said, kind of mother yourself, kind of be there for yourself, and to maybe position yourself in such a way that's like, if I wouldn't say this to a good friend, if I wouldn't say this to a child, if I wouldn't say this to a family member, if I wouldn't say this to someone I love, then I'm not going to say it to myself. Or if I wouldn't treat someone I love like this, I'm not going to treat myself like this either. Easier said than done, I know, especially when trauma brain does what trauma brain does, but I do feel like it's like, this is step 3. By the way, this is not like week 1, week 2, week 3. This unfolds at whatever pace your consciousness you are ready for. Okay, so like this whole I need to take my power back type of thing, maybe that takes you like a day to declare to yourself, like, yeah, I do need to do that. But the breakdown, readjustment, forgiveness phase, like step 2, maybe that takes 6 months. Maybe it takes a couple of years. It really just depends on you and what you're ready for and what you're able to handle. Okay? Because your angel is not going to allow you to dive into things that are going to be detrimental to you. It's just that simple and that complicated. There is no one size fits all for this sort of thing. Okay? And it is going to take, you know, this sensitivity to what you're trying to do. So you also have here, which these cards came out together, so we're going to read them that way. Virgo, analytical, functional, efficient, with equinox, commitment, integration, shifts. And I feel like the reason why this is coming out in part is because it's really speaking to doing whatever works for you. Okay? And I think part of that is also coming through, right? So this Virgo analytical energy, I feel like part of it is pointing to this level of self-awareness, right? Not just doing it because it's worked for everyone else or because it's trendy or because someone is like, this is what you should do or whatever. You know, that's part of kind of having this sovereignty over your own reality, or kind of being the leader of your own evolution. Okay, it's being the individual that you are. And to be quite frank, like, this is where we are as human beings in our evolution. It's developing our capital I, our individuality. That's not to say that there may not be certain structures and things that you can follow or look into or whatever it is, but it's about choosing what's best for you and being very aware of what works and what doesn't. Okay. And then, of course, you know, we have this commitment, integration, and shifts. So figuring out what works, what's creating shifts, and integrating that, committing to it. Because you're not going to feel 100% gung-ho every single day. So, you know, there could be days where, quite frankly, life is lifing and you want to just revert back to your old self and you just want to, you know, crawl back into the hole or whatever. I mean, that's not to say that, you know, we all haven't been there, that we all haven't fell off the wagon, as it were, you know, or kind of took a detour, like a side quest or whatever you want to call it. But it's, you know, finding what works, finding what creates shifts, and integrating it into your life, creating new patterns, committing to it. Right? Like, and it's, this isn't just, how do I say this? It's interesting because I feel like there's a part of you that appreciates kind of a more practical approach, like that appreciates like a step-by-step kind of thing in a way. Yeah, I feel like there's a part of you that can pick up something like this, something that's kind of laid out, even if it's just very loosely laid out, that puts you in a position where it's like, okay, yeah, that's probably something that I could do. That's probably something that I could start to integrate into my life. Whereas, somebody's like, oh, you just need to heal. You're like, well, what the hell do you mean? What I don't even know what that looks like. So, for the sake of time and the length of this video, for the sake of the storage on my camera, like, I feel like these are some pretty practical steps, right? It's like, okay, this is where we start. And how it unfolds, I feel like this is a good way of looking at it too, right? It's like being self-aware and analyzing self and understanding what is actually working, what's actually functional, what actually works for me, what is useful, what is actually going to, or does help me to create shifts. Okay, let's integrate that. Let's make that part of our daily. Let's commit to that. I feel like it gives you a foundation to start building on, a structure to start building on. And I think that's really important. All the while kind of implementing everything you learned up to that point, right? Because I feel like you can kind of look at this, and especially because of the way healing is, right? You'll peel back a layer, you'll feel like, yes, I've got this on lock, I'm great. And then something will happen and like, boom, you're like, oh, here we are again, right? But the thing of it is like, here you are again, but with what you've already learned. So you're not like, here we are again back at square one, but here we are again with what I've already learned. How do I use what I've learned to navigate this level of whatever it is I've been healing, right? So again, kind of going back to what okay, well, there's going to be a readjustment period. There's going to be a readjustment period. Now I need to be sensitive and caring and nurturing and allow for this readjustment and forgive, especially if I find myself triggered, or if I find myself, taking steps backward, or whatever it is, right? I'm not going to let this thing have power over me. So it really is this kind of loop, not a loop, it really is kind of, coming back to what and what works again and again and again, and readjusting as needed in order to help to, again, continue to build upon this foundation, right? What works, what doesn't. I hope that makes sense. All right. What else, please? My goodness. Thank you. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get the book for this middle card here. When we get to it, we will dive into the guidebook, but oh wow, okay, we'll start with that one too. So these two cards here, regeneration, blessed, both of them have shown up in the reverse, which means they're in this protective kind of energy, or protection kind of energy. So we'll dive into the guidebook for those, but before we do that, I would just kind of want to start and feel into them. This regeneration energy, kind of speaks for itself. It's, again, that transformation. And I feel like this has something to do with what we were speaking on earlier, which is this like fear of change, this fear of transformation. I don't know, interestingly, there's something here about this fear coming up as, like a fear of losing yourself. Or maybe like losing what you've already built, what you already have established. Okay? And I'm gonna be real with you. It's valid. I mean, of course, every feeling you have is valid. So I'm not saying that it isn't, but it's a very valid thing to fear how drastic these changes can be when you really start to peel back all of these layers, when you start to heal and you start to really understand what's in alignment with you and what's not. I mean, this has absolutely been an experience of many people who have taken on their own healing, their own evolution of consciousness, right? Like 100%, you can have people who are living their life one way and they've been living their life this way their whole life, and they have this whole plan and they have all of these things that are established, and friendship groups and jobs and living situations, and maybe they have a partner or a person, or married, whatever it is. And then they start embarking on this journey of self-discovery, on this journey of healing, and like I said, the evolution of their own consciousness. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I've spent 20, 30 years being a lawyer and I don't want anything to do with that, actually. A good example of this, if you want to see this like really play out real life, there's a channel on YouTube, and I hope I'm getting this the right way, but I think it's Gooby and Dooby, or maybe Doobie and Gooby. I can't remember which way it goes, but it's this fella who was a neurosurgeon, who basically, I mean, he has a whole video on this specifically. Like, I think it's something like, if I can find it, I will link it in the notes below if you want to check it out. But essentially the gist of the video I'm speaking about that he made was, he pretty much decided like, I don't want to be a neurosurgeon anymore, actually. I actually don't want anything to do with this at all. And I mean, and he, made good money and like was like top of his class and all the things, like he was very good at it, all this stuff. And he just like, nah, I just really don't want to do this anymore. Like it's really not in alignment with who I am and who I want to be and all the things, so that's a very good real life, like you can see it, it's not just me talking about it, but you can see his experience. But he's not the first, and he certainly will not be the last, where people just kind of start waking up, or they start, diving into themselves, and they're like, wait a minute, this is actually not the life I want to be living. And the more that they, get into alignment with themselves, the more they realize how out of alignment everything else around them now is. Okay? Now, that's not always the case, of course, but I share that with you because, again, it's a very real acknowledgement of what might unfold. Like, it's a very it makes sense to consider that. Like, if I embark on this journey of rebirth, as it were, the life that I've built and feel so blessed by could now shift dramatically, which is a genuine possibility. Okay? However, let's take a look at the guidebook and read the protection messages for these two cards and see how they play into what we've been discussing thus far, or what light can be shed on what we've been discussing thus far. Just give me a second to find the first message here. Okay. So this is the number 46 or 10 or 1, which is interesting, right? Because we're talking about new beginnings here. And again, this has shown up in this reverse or imbalanced position. And the meanings for this card are essentially rebirth, second chances, new opportunities. The protection message says, endings come in many forms, and now is the time to stop holding on to what must die, so that something better can take its place. Nature's cycles include disease, decay, death, and regeneration. Let whatever isn't working in your life die. Don't be afraid to face the facts. There's no need to struggle or grieve. Whatever your query, let it go. You're about to be reborn. I mean, come on. Come on. It pretty much encapsulates everything we've been talking about, at least in, the first part of this video, right? I love it when that happens. Okay, let's take a look at the next message. This is the number 22, which I think is really freaking fascinating because the number 22, as far as numerology is concerned, is the number of the master builder. Okay, and here we are talking about foundations and all those things. So I think that's really fascinating, just as a side note. Okay. But we have here, the blessed card, which the meanings for it are something wonderful that is unearned and unexpected. Grace that is an unforeseen gift from spirit. The message says, humility is called for now, as grace is an unearned gift. You didn't gain this by your own desires or actions. To be who you need to be, you can no longer do what you did. In a way, you have hit rock bottom, and what is required now is nothing less than total surrender. Then you will be blessed. I mean, really? Really? You can't make this up. I mean, it's essentially asking you to, tear down everything that's been built thus far and start rebuilding from the bottom up, right? And it's interesting too, one of the things that I feel could be something that's felt and experienced is good God, what is the point of going through, X amount of years of my life living this way, only to wake up and be like, wait, this is not true to who I am, and now I've got to start over and all the things. While it can be a bit jarring, okay, while it can be very, very uncomfortable and ask a lot of you, it's important to consider that what you've experienced up to this point has taught you. Okay, what you've learned from those things, how you've grown. And I know that can be very, very difficult, especially if, it was painful, if it still is painful, especially if, there's a lot of unresolved things going on there, which I'm in no way, shape, or form trying to invalidate. Okay? But I'll just share with you a quick story about my own journey. When I started kind of opening my eyes to things and realizing how there were people in my life who I had been this, people pleaser to, people who I was very close with, it hurt a lot. And I felt very betrayed. I felt a lot of things. And one of the ways that I was able to start to move past that is by, again, looking at what those situations taught me. So for example, someone I would just show up for over and over and over again, and I would betray myself over and over and over again. Like I would say yes when I wanted to say no, and I would be at their beck and call, and that wasn't reciprocated in the same way or even close. Again, very hurt by that. The conversation I kind of had with myself is what did I learn there? Well, I learned that I was betraying myself over and over and over again. It showed me that. Which, not comfortable, not fun and fuzzy and, light and love and all that. But it was true. And one of my probably more repeated sayings is, the truth will set you free, but first it's going to hurt a lot. So I'm not saying that because, it'll be the same for you. It'll work the same for you. I'm just using it as an example, right? To give you perhaps a perspective to look at it from. It's not to say that it's going to be the perspective that you pick up. It's not to say that it's going to be the perspective that works, right? But it is a perspective. Wow, we also have yin, the number 2. So you have 3 2s coming out here. What I do like about this, Scorpio, is that, we have 46 or 10 or 1, which, is the beginning. I mean, with 10, it's like the end and the beginning, or, as we've talked about here, like this death and rebirth. This is essentially what this card is, right? So we have the beginning, and then we have 2s. So it's like the next step, right? We're not just stuck on 1, but it's movement, right? And I think that's great. So, of course, we're going to read the protection message for this card as well, but with the yin energy, I mean, Scorpio, you really can't make this up. It is bringing to the forefront that more feminine or motherly kind of energy again. This more nurturing, this more allowing, right? Giving grace and forgiveness and being more receptive versus forceful. It really is kind of solidifying and reiterating what we've already been talking about. I think it's also speaking to, balance. Let's see here. Okay, so the meanings for yin: the feminine principle of receptivity, letting someone else make the first move, gathering information and taking in cues, the art of conscious allowing. Can't make it up. Okay, let's read this protection message. Do you have trouble receiving? You stop the flow of abundance when you continually insist on being the giver. You can't always lead, always give, always teach. What did I say? What did I say, Scorpio? You can't always be all the things to everyone. What did I say? Where's the paper? Hold on. Oh, you don't have to carry it all on your own all the time. Same type of thing, right? You can't always lead, always give, always teach. You must be the student, the open vessel, and the one who receives the gift, gesture, or offer in equal measure. Open up and let love, life, abundance, and spirit fill you without demand or expectation. Just receive the bounty that is yours. So I feel like what's important to note here, what's important to kind of pull out of what is being said here, or what's important to extract from what is being said here, is, first of all, like we were talking about in the first half of this video, right? Like I just repeated, you can't be all the things all the time. It's important to have this balance, to have this reciprocity, to be evenly yoked, right? And the other thing I feel like that's being reiterated here, or another, or something else we can pull from this, is this whole conversation that we've already had about letting things unfold. When you loosen your grip, when you open up, right, without force, right, without demand or expectation, as it says here, then you just receive. Things just kind of unfold. Things just play out. And I feel like that could be a very helpful position or perspective for you to stand in, because there's something that feels like almost like having your head on a swivel. Maybe you are someone who would identify with experiencing a lot of anxiety, or feeling anxious or on edge, or scattered, or like you don't have a lot of room or a lot of capacity, things like that, right? Like you could be someone who feels that way, like your head's always on a swivel. And I feel like if you resonate with that, then not only is whatever's going on taking up space, right? It's taking up space within your mind, within your being, within your heart, like within your body. It's taking up space, right? So not only is just whatever's going on taking up space, but on top of that, it's like how do I word this? It's almost like you carve out a space that is for whatever you might find yourself coming across or facing that you're on the lookout for. Does that make sense? So like, oh, if you're worried about whatever's to come, then you have this space carved out for it. And so it's just kind of there. And so it's like being at full capacity all the time, without room for much else. And so if you were to take that position, right, and just kind of let things unfold, again, easier said than done, not expecting for this to, come to fruition overnight. But if you can get to a place where you can take that position and things are just allowed to unfold, then all of that space that was taken up by what might happen is now freed up. You don't have to feel like you may not feel so weighed down, right? You may not feel so heavy, right? Let's see, what else would like to come through for you? Thank you. Okay, one more, please. Okay. Let's just kind of get these moved up a little bit to make sure everything is in frame. Perfect. There's a part of this that feels like some of these things that are coming through are a little bit more difficult to swallow or hear, a little bit more uncomfortable maybe, because like all of a sudden my heart is kind of like palpitating, feels a little bit anxious. So maybe these things that are coming out now are a little bit uncomfortable, right? Wow, 3 of Swords. Interesting that I was just talking about the heart, and here we have this giant heart on the 3 of Swords. I mean, this is, I feel like this is one of those things where it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words type of thing, right? That's how this feels. It's like, the amount of, I can see why I got that message of like things may feel a little uncomfortable. Okay, so this 3 of Swords coming through feels to me like an acknowledgement of the pain and the grief and the suffering, right? The cost of trying to, how do I word this properly? Okay, because if you look at the heart here on the card, if you can see that, I'm sorry for the glare, there's all of these threads, right? And in the middle there are threads that are, you know, trying to keep that heart together. And the way that I'm seeing this is like trying to piece yourself together, right? But notice how like the heart isn't whole, right? There are these different fragments. So it's essentially, we'll get there, I promise, hang with me. The grief, the pain, the suffering, again, the cost of trying to hold yourself together, hold these fragments of yourself together, but not being truly in alignment with who you authentically are, your morals, your values, your principles, you know, what you want out of life, your purpose, all the things that make you you. Does that make sense? I'm being reminded of another song right now, actually. It's a cover that Rudimental did for Just a Version, and I will link it below, but it's a cover of Ready or Not by the Fugees, and there's a part in that song that says, "I'm screaming on mute 'cause you ain't really hearing me." That's what this feels like. And I think that's even, I feel like that's even, how do I say that? I feel like it hits even harder because not a lot of people really know you. Like, they might know you, like surface level know you, but they don't really know you. Not really. And I feel like this, like, screaming on mute 'cause you ain't really hearing me, it feels like it's coming through so, like, it feels like there's so much truth to that in a lot of ways. Because I feel like somebody who says they know you, okay? I feel like they could say that. And to some degree, like I said, that may be true, but like my mood face is doing a thing. There's this kind of like, almost this look of like confusion, because it's like, you know me, but you don't really know me. And I feel like this is really acknowledging the cost of trying to keep yourself together when you're trying to be something you're not. Right? And she has this like belt or something around her upper waist area, upper chest area, or lower chest area. Right? It's like the cost of being bound up, of not being free to be who you really are, because it does come with a heavy, heavy, heavy price. Knight of Pentacles. I feel like working through that, like, right, acknowledging that and working through that, I feel like is going to take a lot of patience. The Knight of Pentacles is a slow energy. Like, you cannot rush working through that. Two of Wands, yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay, so this is planting new seeds, and again, you know, not being able to rush through that. Okay, because leaving behind everything that you've known is not easy. It's just not. That's just the reality of it. Leaving your comfort zone is not easy. Like, but this Two of Wands, though, is also bringing forward this energy of, like, but if you don't do it, you're always going to wonder, what if I did? Right? It feels like you could certainly stay and just allow things to keep, unfolding as they always have. But it's like there would always be that question in the back of your mind. What if? Right? Yeah, Eight of Cups. Again, like I said, what if? What if I, let go of all of the things that were no longer serving me? What if I left it behind? What if I gave myself the opportunity to experience something different? What if I saw myself outside of or apart from my trauma wounding programming? Right? What would I look, what like, what would be possible if I didn't identify myself with my trauma wounding programming and I left it behind? I just walked away from it all. And again, like I'm saying, just like it's, just a piece of cake, but it's not, okay? It's not. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I don't want to be disingenuous. I don't want to be dishonest. So I'm not, going to sit here and pretend like it's so easy to just walk away from these sorts of things. It's not. But I do feel like if you don't walk away from it, again, there's always going to be that question, like, who could I be if I would have walked away? Because here's the thing. If you're listening to this, I feel like there's a part of you that is aware that things could be different. I mean, things can always be different, right? That's just life. But I feel like there's this part of you, like this deep part of you that knows that you are different, that knows that this person that you have been showing to the world, or that you've been showing to your tribe, let's say, right? This person that you've been showing, this face that you've been showing, is not fully you. I think you know that. That being said, I do feel like there's a part of you, if you weren't to embark on this journey of self-discovery and healing and evolution, I feel like there's a part of you that would say, but what if I had? Yeah, Four of Wands. Come on. I mean, this is celebration, right? What would it look like if I embarked on this journey of self-discovery, of healing, of evolution? Right? I think there's a part of you that knows that you would find your people. Because again, remember, we talked about earlier that there may be this fear of losing what you've already built. Or, one of the questions that we asked earlier was, is there a fear of, essentially being cast out, or a fear of what people would think or do if you were true to who you actually are, right? And I feel like there's some part of you that knows that you would find your people, because I feel like when you've been, out on your own, again, maybe this is away from like family or culture, like something, there's a part of you that when you've been separate from that, when you've been, more, we'll say more authentic, I feel like you found your people. And I feel like it goes back to what I was saying earlier, right? Like when someone is authentic and true to themselves, like they're magnetic. People really, really are drawn to that and they appreciate it. And I think you've probably found that people love you and appreciate you and like who you are when you've shown some of those people, glimpses. It's so fascinating to me, Scorpio, because I feel like there's this, if you're in the middle of a circle, the people who have really got to see glimpses of the true you, or as close as you feel comfortable letting them, your closest group, I feel like they appreciate who you are and they love who you are and they accept who you are, and they celebrate that. Right? And I feel like they probably know when you're not being true to that also. Right? And then I feel like there's another circle that's like they get the surface. And they think they know you, but they only know that surface. Or maybe you want to call it a mask. Maybe that's a little extreme or a little dramatic, like pardon my Leo. But it feels like they haven't, like they think they know you, but they know only what you show them. I think that's probably the best way to put it. Right? They know what you allow them to know. And so, again, I feel like there's something that tells me that that if you were to allow yourself to work through these things and leave behind, the pain and the grief and the suffering, to allow yourself to work through those things, to right, acknowledge what's going on and allow yourself to move forward and to leave that behind, I feel like that you would find your people. I feel like that to some degree, and maybe it wouldn't be as many people as now, okay, but and maybe those people wouldn't be your blood family or whatever your current group consists of, but I feel like they would celebrate you, they would love you, that they would accept you, that there would be people out there who would do that. And I feel like you would have this sense of like freedom and enthusiasm and life that I don't feel like you may have experienced really. Right? Maybe you've had glimpses of it, but I don't feel like it doesn't feel like something that's been like consistent or, and that's not to say that life should be all, butterflies and rainbows, or that it should be easy all the time, or that it should be this giant celebration. I think that people who have this perspective on life that think it should be, love and light all the time, like, oh, life, it's supposed to be easy. Like, no, I think that's foolish. I think that's not reality. I feel like that's fantasy. Okay. But I do feel like if you were living more in alignment with who you authentically are more frequently, I feel like your experience of life would be a lot more fulfilling. That's what I feel like. I mean, and feel free to tell me to like kick rocks. Okay? Like, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But this is what I'm picking up on. And now you have 4 2s out here, which I just have to say, with all of these twos coming up, I definitely feel like however this unfolds, whatever it looks like, however it happens, or whether it happens at all, is all your choice. I think that's like the key thing here. This is your choice. Because God, Christ, the angels, like, they're not going to force any kind of evolution on you. They're not going to force growth on you. They're not going to make you change. No being of the spiritual hierarchy, no benevolent being is going to do that. No loving being is going to do that. They're just not. You have to choose you. It is completely up to you, which I feel like is why, like, smack dab in the center is this Two of Wands. Because it's like, do I keep living the life that I've lived? Or do I leave what I've always known and experience something different? Because essentially this is like, this Two of Wands is like the card of like leaving home. Okay, that's not that I'm not saying that because I think you're like, you know, just fresh out mom's house. Like, I'm not saying that. Maybe that's true and that's fine, but like, I'm not saying it for that reason. The reason I'm bringing it up is because in this instance, this home, right, leaving home is just leaving what you've always known. Okay? And I think that's why it's smack dab at the center, because it's like none of this unfolds without you deciding that that's what's going to happen. You can take everything that I've shared here with you, and like I said, tell me to kick rocks. Nope, not my life. Nope, that's not, oh, and okay, fine, that's fair. You know you best, right? It's your life. You're the one that has to live it, not me. Let's take a look at the bottom of the deck. Wow, bro. Don't be offended if you're a female, by the way. I call everyone bro. It doesn't matter. The devil. The devil at the bottom of the deck. Okay. I mean, so this is wild. Wild. Because it's what we were just talking about, essentially. Right? Do you remain in bondage? Which, that's a repeating concept. I mean, here it's like a puppet, right? But still, see all the strings, all the threads? This is giving external things, right? Maybe that's validation of other people, maybe it's culture, maybe it's religion, maybe it's family, whatever it is. It's giving external things power over you. That's what it is. Right? Giving the world power over you. Society, like I said, whatever it is. And I think maybe because this was at the bottom of the deck, okay, maybe this is a realization you might come to, which is realizing how much things outside of yourself have had power over you. And I said that earlier, right? Like, when we start really digging through our stuff, when we really start healing and we start taking on this task of evolution, of raising our consciousness, taking responsibility, that is one of the things that comes up, is realizing how much you aren't actually, like how much, how do I say this? How much you aren't actually you, like how much instead it's how much you is culture and how much you is religion and how much you is your family and their belief systems and programming that's been passed down to you, and how much of you is your mother, and how much of you is your father, and how much of you is your grandmother, and how much of you is this XYZ, right? Your trauma wounding programming, like how much of you is not actually you. And then, of course, finding forgiveness for not knowing what you didn't know, for not realizing like how much of you is actually not you. Right? And that unfolds to varying degrees. Like some people are more themselves than others. Okay? And maybe you'll find like some things were genuinely you. Okay? Like, so for me, and I'm, of course, your story is not mine, but for me, like one of the things that was pretty consistent and has remained pretty consistent from as far back as I can remember are my morals and my values. My principles, like those have remained pretty consistent throughout my entire life. And so, you may find that certain things, but that's what this is, right? The devil is like these external things that have control over you. These things that keep you bound, chained. And I don't know why, but I'm being reminded of like, it was like a skit, I feel like, or I don't know, it was somebody on a stage. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen it. Maybe it was like some kind of pastor or something. But somebody was talking about how do you know the devil's got you? And it's like, because the devil will let you wander just so far. But then when you hit a certain point, like the devil like yanks the chain back, right? Like yanks you back, and then you realize, oh, shnikes, like I'm actually not as free as I thought I was. And while, I feel like this person, whoever was talking about this, was relating this to things like addiction. I feel, and a lot of people do, the reason I'm saying that is because a lot of people do connect the devil card to things like addiction. But I feel like this is also true for, the trauma wounding programming, those structures, those belief systems. It's not just about addiction to, substances or alcohol or pornography or like whatever it is. This can also be very true for whatever trauma is running in the background, right? Because if you're afraid that, let's say, your family will abandon you or reject you because you have different beliefs and priorities and values than they do, and you start to wander down that road, if you are not okay with losing them, if you're not okay with being rejected, if you're not okay, right? Like if you don't feel within yourself, like I will sacrifice that to be true, then that chain's going to be yanked right back, right? Because you'll get to like the outskirts, but you won't cross the fence, kind of thing, and that's why, and this is not true in all cases, of course, that is why you hear all these stories about people who have estranged parents or family members or siblings or whatever it is, right? It's because they walked to that line and they crossed over it. And some of those people were like, well, trying to yank the chain back, and it's like, sorry, that it doesn't work anymore. Like I've cut that now. You know what I'm saying? They've made that sacrifice. Not because they wanted to, not because it was pleasant, right? But because it's what they had to do for themselves. So I feel like, again, it's something very real to acknowledge. Like, What are you willing to sacrifice to be you? Like, to truly be you. And I don't mean this in like any kind of nefarious or weird kind of way, okay? I mean, like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And that can be your belief systems, that can be your mindsets, that can be outdated ways of thinking and paradigms, and, you know, maybe it's culture, maybe it's religion, maybe it's family, maybe it's living situations, right? Fill in the blank. But what are you willing to sacrifice in order to be who you truly are, authentically you? What are you willing to give up? Because that is what is required. Sacrifice is required to evolve. Like, and I don't care what anybody else says. I really don't care. It is required. For true spiritual evolution, it is required. Sacrifice is required. So I feel like that's, you know, a very real conversation to have with yourself. Like, what am I willing to give up in order to be who I truly am? What will I commit to giving up to be who I truly am? All right, so moving forward, I feel like we've already kind of pivoted in a way. I feel like we've kind of established like a baseline and are kind of like pivoting toward the future. Thank you. Yeah. All right. That was fast. And they both came out face up this time, so I feel like we're getting a little bit, we're settling into things, getting a little bit more comfortable with them again. We do have here the law of action. Get out of your comfort zone and take bold action today. I mean, it speaks for itself, right? It speaks for itself. I feel like a part of what the message here is saying is like, don't be afraid to go lone wolf. You know? Like that bold action, get out of your comfort zone and take bold action. Like, don't be afraid to go lone wolf. Because you learn things in solitude that you can't learn otherwise. Right? So in our culture today, there's a lot of stimulation. And a lot of people are very, very, very uncomfortable with stillness and silence, right? A lot of people are always kind of searching for busyness, you know, and I mean, it's a product of the culture we live in, the society we live in. You know, it's productivity, it's busyness, it's hustle, it's, you know, a lot of that. But therein lies the problem, right? And one could argue that one of the reasons our society looks the way it does is because we've strayed so far from God. Meaning, when you're still, when you're quiet, that is when you can hear God, right? God is a still small whisper, something like that, right? It's like when you're still, when you're quiet, when you're not busy, that's when God comes in. That's when your angel can speak to you, and that's when you can hear your angel speaking to you, right? But if you're always distracted, if there's always a noise, and I don't just mean like noise as in sound, right? I mean like noise like in your brain. You know, if you're just scrolling endlessly, which we're all guilty of, okay, fair. But if that's what you're doing, like how can spirit talk to you, right? Like how can spirit reach you if you're distracted with, like, if you're always distracted, if you're never still, if you're never quiet, if you never give them the stage, as it were, right? If you never give them the opportunity, how can they speak to you? How can spirit speak to you? So, you know, again, it's like, don't be afraid to be the lone wolf. Don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone. And not just, you know, like I'm not saying don't be afraid to be the lone wolf as though, you know, I'm speaking about like, oh, just like cut off everybody. Like, I mean, if that's what is best for you, that's what's best for you. But I'm saying that in the sense of like, don't be afraid to be quiet. Don't be afraid to be off by yourself. Don't be afraid to be still. Don't be afraid to just be alone in silence, right? Without being readily available, you know, where someone can just call your phone, boom, you're there. Do you get what I hope you understand what I'm saying. I feel like another part of this that is coming through is like, don't be afraid to start small. I feel like you may be someone who puts a lot of expectation on themselves. And so maybe when you look at something like healing, or, you know, starting to kind of peel back some of these layers and dive into some of these things, that you may have this kind of like, I want to be able to do all the things right now. Kind of like this big picture view of things in a way, like wanting, I hope that makes sense. Like wanting to just dive in head first type of thing. But it's, there's the message here of like not being afraid to start small, right? There's this little sliver of the moon, okay? And the moon is our emotions, our subconscious, our habits, our mood, okay? All these things, like, right, the moon is in the dark. Think about that. And I feel like that sliver is coming through for you, Scorpio, to say like, don't be afraid to start small, right? Like, I would not be running around all willy-nilly giving everyone access to the deepest layers of yourself. I think that's how do I say this? I think that's irresponsible. Okay, because not everyone should have access to every facet of who you are. Not everyone should have access to the deepest layers of yourself. Not everyone should know everything about you. I feel like that's dangerous and irresponsible. Okay, but I feel like this thing, like don't be afraid to, I mean, start testing the water a little bit. Like, start showing people glimpses of who you really are. Just see what happens. You know, because the people who genuinely love you and care for you and want the best for you are, as long as you're not hurting yourself or someone else, they're going to support you. Right? They are. That's just the reality of it. They're not going to try to convince you to be different. They're not going to try to force you to, you know, anything. They're just not. So it's like, don't be afraid to test the water. I feel like Scorpio, you are intuitive enough to discern who's who and what's what. I feel like you probably actually, as I'm saying this, I feel like you probably already have a thread or a lead on who would be okay, like who would fully embrace you as you, and who maybe wouldn't, or who you would have questions about, or who you would be concerned about. Right? So like, don't be afraid to test the water, see what happens. If you're comfortable enough to do that, right? If you can get out of your comfort zone, if you can, you know, take that action, if you can put into practice what we've been talking about, if that resonates with you. Right, so you also have the law of transcendence. Revere the dark side of life. I mean, can you really know light? Can you really know good? Can you really know love if you've never experienced the dark, hatred, evil? Like, can you really transcend? Can you really rise above if you don't acknowledge those things, if you don't accept that as truth? One of the harder things about it is that, you know, you can come to the realization like, oh, I'm surrounded by narcissists, or, you know, something of that nature. Oh, I've been abused. I mean, it took me a while to actually to be in a space where it was finally revealed to me that I was surrounded by narcissists. Right? Like, I had to be, like I said earlier, you have to kind of be ready for certain things, and you're not going to come into knowing about something until you're ready for it. Right? So somebody who had we'll say to some degree, like, leisurely studied psychology for, I think up at the time it was like probably 12 years or so. And like I said, like, I'm not talking about, you know, diving into every article or anything like that, but just really kind of studying human behavior and learning more about it, but not really coming across the whole narcissist or empathic dynamic, and not really having any knowledge of that. I mean, it's a pretty good example of how you don't see something until you're ready for it. I feel like this card is coming through because it's essentially about, again, kind of transcending beliefs, going beyond the limited perceptions, embodying truth, right? And I feel like in order to do that, in order to embody truth, in order to go beyond all of that, like, there has to be this acknowledgement. There has to be this understanding. I also feel like, if I remember correctly, this card is also about living with faith, letting go of doubt. I mean, even if you look at the picture there, you know, these two look very carefree, you know, and if it would focus, they're even facing, they even have their heads tilted back toward the sky. You know, so I feel like this is also about having faith, letting go of doubt, and seeing things from different perspectives. as well. Let's get some final messages for you. Thank you. And one more, please. There it is. Thank you. All right, so you have here for you first, Emerald Tablet activation, cosmic ordering, divine alchemy, conscious manifesting. What an interesting card to show up. I mean, we have been speaking about, you know, healing and transcendence, which, I mean, healing, a lot of what healing is alchemizing, right? Is taking something that was meant for bad or evil to, you know, something that you can use for your good. I'm being reminded of the story of Chiron, the wounded healer, right? Who had spent his life abandoned and cast out, and he wanted to die, you know, but he ended up becoming a healer. He ended up, you know, becoming a teacher. I just saw 222, by the way. If you're still here, okay, I feel like this card is showing up, this Emerald Tablet activation is showing up because, like I was speaking on earlier, things happen as you are ready for them, as you are prepared for them. Okay, so, you know, divine timing, as it were. And I feel like now is the time. There's this alchemist that is waking up within you, right? That is ready to transform, that is ready to alchemize, that's ready to transcend, that's ready to move forward and grow. So in other words, I mean, really based on everything that's come through here, both with the written messages and messages through the cards, and what's showing up here with this Emerald Tablet activation is like, you're ready and you're supported. Okay, it's not by accident that you're here. My channel is really, really small. Okay, so it's not an accident. There's some cosmic ordering going on. And if you choose to take the opportunity presented before you, then you can start to alchemize, you can start to transcend and move forward and grow and evolve consciously, right? So you're an active participant in your own evolution, right? The leader of your evolution, like we were speaking on earlier, right? So we're coming full circle. We're coming full circle now. This is your choice, and only you have the power to step into what is available for you. Nobody can do it for you. Nobody can even shove you into it. But if you've ever heard the phrase, you can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't make it drink. This is universe. This is angels leading you to water. Halls of a Mentee initiation. Secrets revealed, treasures uncovered, initiations. I mean, come on now. Like, this is your initiation. And it's interesting too, because the Emerald Tablet activation in the guidebook, it has this connection to the Halls of a Mentee. I feel like it's something about, hold on, I'm going to grab the book. It says something about, Yes, okay. So the emerald tablet is said to have been carved on a bright green stone that was transported to Egypt around the fall of Atlantis and stored in the halls of Amenti under the Great Pyramid. So, like, again, like these cards kind of go together, right? So we have initiation, the secrets revealed, treasures uncovered, which brings me back to what I was already saying. You know, you have this support, like even if you don't feel like you have support physically, right? Maybe you don't have a lot of people that you feel will support you, you know, or a group or family, whatever it is, but you are supported. And the reason I feel that way isn't just because it's true, but but also because, again, it's like this emerald tablet, according to what we just read, okay, was said to be hidden in the halls of Amenti, but it came out first. So it's like I'm already revealing to you that you have this support, that things are aligning the way that they are to, again, like I said, kind of lead you to water, to show you that there's an alchemist within you, that you have this incredible opportunity to, again, consciously participate in your own evolution. That, I mean, it's like secrets revealed, treasures uncovered, because a lot of people, a vast majority of people, are literally on autopilot. A lot of people live life very robotically. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong with routine or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. So many people would rather not take the responsibility. I'm not saying they're not responsible adults or that, you know, they're not whatever, okay? How many people do you know who are actually taking responsibility for their own healing, their own internal healing, and are consciously participating in their spiritual evolution? Which I just have to point out, like, nothing against those people. We all evolve at our own pace, as we should, okay? But how many people do you know are actually doing that? Right? So there's this extraordinary opportunity that's being presented to you to say you can take this into your own hands. Right? Because again, like I said, most people are living on autopilot. The belief systems, the paradigm, the culture, the society is what is controlling their lives. Okay? And your trauma wounding and your programming literally affects how you see the world, how you see yourself, how you see other people, how you have relationships with people, how you interact with them, how you speak, how you move through the world. It literally impacts everything you do, everything that you are. And most people, it's like you can ask people, like, why do you do that? Oh, well, because so-and-so told me, like my grandma told me, and so I just do it. But, and I'm not saying those are bad things, okay? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just pointing out that there are a lot of things that we do and we don't even stop to ask why. We just do it. So again, it's like, this is your initiation. And you are now kind of, which I think is really interesting again, is like, now you're kind of standing in this in-between space between, you know, the physical material world and the spiritual world. And like I said earlier, you have some decisions to make. I mean, again, you know, even if we look at the card here, right, you have the Two of Wands here, each wand, right, with a choice to make. I'm hearing, what is that song? Is that like The Clash or something? Oh gosh, it's like, do I stay or do I go now? Anyways, Here it's very similar, right? You have each one of these columns, the physical and the spiritual. And it's like, there's decisions to make here. Like, do we just keep leaning into the world that I've always known? Or do I realize that like there's a whole nother aspect of this that I can be acknowledging, again, being consciously aware of. Seriously? Third eye activation. Brow chakra, inner vision, clear seeing, right? Like there's this whole other aspect that I could be considering. And okay, so like here's the thing. This is not to say that you're like, you're just fresh into the spiritual concepts or things like this, okay? But maybe you haven't really truly exposed yourself, right? Like maybe you've dipped your toe in here and there. Maybe you haven't really given it any serious thought, or maybe you've just been kind of, how do I say this? It feels almost like, I don't want to say like being an observer, but it kind of feels a little wishy-washy, right? Like it kind of feels like I'm just dipping my toe in, like I don't really know what to make of this, like, and I feel like you might find there's an actual structure, there's an actual study to spirituality. Okay, and maybe that's something you want to explore when you're ready. But no matter how you decide to move forward, whatever path you choose, I pray that you choose the one that is best suited for you, the one that is most in alignment with you and your truth and what you feel like you should be doing, regardless of what anyone else thinks, what anyone else says, how they might feel, how they might react. Because at the end of it all, you have to live with you for the rest of your life, and you are the only person that has to do that. So I pray you make the decision you can live with. Thank you so very much for joining me. It's been wonderful to be here with you. I pray these messages have been helpful for you in some way, shape, or form. Take care of your wise, growing, evolving, beautiful soul. Peace be with you and within you. And I hope to see you in another chat. Bye.